Hey, this is Walt from waltonpa.com as well as stowgearreview.com, here with another video for my personal blog. And it's been quite a while since I've been able to update it, not to mention do any sort of video. I mean, I did a couple of videos recently, actually two, over the past 2 months. I did some book reviews for Fantasy Faction. If you're subscribed to the Blip TV feed, you obviously saw those. But I haven't done a video dedicated to my personal blog in, I don't even know when the last one was. It was most likely a book review. But I was kind of thinking today, what can I do to put something on my blog? It's been so long. I've been so busy with my daughter and maintaining Stow Gear Review and everything else that comes along with this time of year in the cigar industry, where we're gearing up for large events like Cigar Fest, Cigar Expo. We've got IPCPR not far from here. There's a lot of politics going on as far as bloggers attending a retail trade show and things like that. So there's been a lot of stress and a lot to kind of keep my eye on. So adding new things to the site has been really difficult. And I thought it's a bit easier sometimes to do these videos than it is to think of a topic and write on it, or try to come up with a piece of creative writing, because it's been so long since I've done that I'm really out of practice, and it's really kind of sloppy, and I get frustrated with it. So I thought, what can I do video wise to put some content on the site and maybe just have a little bit of fun. So I was kind of looking at what's been going on lately. You're probably not interested in hearing about the cigar stuff, or if you were, you'd be watching it on Stow Gear Review. So there's no sense in putting, Stow Gear Review related content on my personal blog. And my daughter, of course, I could talk about, but it's just typical, father stuff. Funny little clips here and there, are great, but not. I don't think it would make anything for substance. I didn't have anything mapped out in my mind. And the only other thing that has been on my mind lately is guns. So I thought, maybe I'll talk about guns. I'll show you my first pistol, talk about it a little bit, talk about my first experience buying a gun, which initially I was thinking, well, I'll do my first gun video, and I'll show you the first gun I ever bought. But the first gun I ever bought is a rifle, and I didn't feel like dragging it out. I had already grabbed the pistol. So I thought that's where we would go. I'll talk about a little bit about my first experience with guns and my first buying experience, which is kind of funny, and where I'm at right now. And it all starts off kind of in my childhood. I was not in a gun household. My father and my grandfather had spent quite a bit of time in their younger years shooting. My grandfather even got into reloading at one point in time. I actually have his old press. I don't have any dies or anything for it, but I actually have his old reloading press. And over time, my grandfather and my father sort of got away from it. At the time, they were shooting a lot with my uncle, who was a police officer in Philadelphia. And when he retired from the force, he sold all of his guns and actually got into the bar business. He used the funding from all of his guns, or his gun collection, to give him seed money to start a bar. And once my uncle did that, and the armory, or whatever you want to call it, the arsenal, had shrunken considerably, they didn't go out shooting as much. And I'm not quite sure when my father got out of it. But growing up, the only gun that ever was in my family's home was my father's old shotgun. I wasn't aware of anything else, and I had never shot a gun as a kid. I've never handled one as a kid, and despite growing up in a high crime area, I had never shot before. And just sort of in the area and a lot of gun violence, I got it in my head that guns were they weren't necessarily evil, but they weren't good either. And when I got a little bit older, I got into a different shooting sport. I got into archery. In addition to guns, my father's side of the family was also big into archery. My grandmother my grandfather, my father, and my three aunts. Three aunts, right? Yeah, three aunts. All were a big archery family. They got together and they would go to a local archery club, and they would all shoot as a family. Well, by the time I got into it, my father was not shooting much anymore, spending a lot of time working. My grandmother was still working at the time. My grandfather was retired, and my aunts were all, moved away, had kids of their own, and weren't into it anymore. But my grandfather actually, he got the kids into it. I don't even remember how old I was when I started, but I started shooting, my brother started shooting, and my cousin started shooting all around the same time. We would go up to the archery club with my grandfather on the weekends, and we'd have a great time. And during the summer, when we were off from school, my grandfather used to take us up for work days on like a Wednesday. I think it was one Wednesday a month or something like that. But what we would do is we would go up early in the morning. We'd get there probably 8 o'clock, and we'd put maybe 4 hours in around the club, maintaining targets, cleaning up, things like that. As much as the little kids could do, we did. And the rest of the men would do the heavy lifting and the hard work. And we'd all have lunch together, and then from in the afternoon, the adults would kind of sit down and talk and have a good time, and all the kids would be able to go shoot on the practice range, or if one of the adults would take us, they'd walk us through the walking course, which was 30 targets at the time, through the woods and stuff. It was really cool. And as I grew up, I had this mindset of, guns are kind of for hunting, and, if you want to be a real hunter, you want to use a bow because it's more difficult. And, that's kind of the mindset that I had as a kid. Well, in my teens, my family moved away to the area that I'm in now, out in the Reading area. And, the archery just kind of fell off my radar at that point in time. I was too far away to go. My father wasn't into it, so there was no one to take me. The club was an hour and a half, 2 hours away. So I just kind of fell away from it. I wasn't involved in it from there. And I didn't do any shooting for, I don't know, maybe 10 years. I guess it was 3 or 4 years ago I joined an archery club in this area. And what I wanted to do was get back into the shooting sports. And I quickly found out that new archery equipment is fairly expensive. And what I ended up doing was buying consignment, an older bow, and trying to do things the old way, which wasn't with a release, shooting fingers. So finding a bow that was long enough for me to shoot with a finger tab was difficult. I wasn't shooting sights or a scope or anything like that. And I found it really difficult. And I had a lot going on at that point in time, so it was really difficult to immerse myself in the sport. I did what I could. I actually got my brother and my father to join. We did a couple of outings together, had a good time, but eventually we all got busy and we started going less and less. I think I was the last person to just kind of let my membership lapse. And then that was kind of it. I didn't do anything for a few years after that, and then I was out visiting a friend of mine, and he was telling me about this cabin a friend of ours has. It's out in central Pennsylvania. He's part of I guess it's kind of like a timeshare. There's a group of 15 people that own the property. It's private, and it was purchased for hunting at one point in time. Their fathers bought it and passed it down to the sons, and now the sons have it. And basically, it's kind of like a lodge. It's got 2 floors. Downstairs there's a living room and a kitchen, and upstairs is one massive bedroom which sleeps, I think, 15 people. And every now and again this friend of ours would go up there, and he didn't do much hunting, but he went up there and he set up a shooting range, and he'd shoot and just kind of hang out in the woods and enjoy himself. And he invited a couple of friends out. I wasn't able to make it the first couple of times, but just kind of out of the blue, a good friend of mine calls me up and says, "Hey, we're doing Man's Weekend again. Do you want to come hang out?" And I didn't have anything going on at the time, so I said, yeah, sure, I'll do man's weekend. And basically what that meant was there'd be roughly a dozen of us going out to this cabin to work around the property, maintain it a bit, drink a lot of beer, and shoot guns. Not in that order, actually. We drank a lot of beer after we after we shot the guns. We were safe. But I had never shot before. I didn't have anything to take with me, and I was going with people that had their own mini arsenal. So I was kind of intimidated, but I wanted to go and experience the gun culture, because again, up until this point in time, I had no experience with it. So we go up there. We spend several hours in the car to get there. We get there. It's the dead of night. Get a fire going. We all have a couple of beers. Then the following morning, we all get up, work around the property a little bit after breakfast, have lunch, and then we get into shooting. And the first handgun I ever shot was a .32 revolver. I think it was. I don't remember what it was. I don't think it was a Smith & Wesson. I think it may have been a Rossi. But that was my first shooting experience, and I loved it. I thought it was great. And, there was really no recoil to the little gun, and it was fun. And then a friend of mine took that out of my hands and handed me an SKS and said, shoot it, and so I did. And God, I shot that thing so much that when I came home, like 2 days later, I had this huge bruise on my shoulder. I had a big smile on my face, bruise on my shoulder. I had a great time. That gun really beat the hell out of me, but I had a lot of fun. I shot an SKS, an AK, black powder, 50 caliber, and a 410 and a 12 gauge shotgun. Actually, the shotgun kicked harder than the SKS, but I ended up having a great time. I came home, and I decided, I'm gonna get a gun. I had the most fun with the SKS, so that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna find one. I'm gonna buy it, and I'm gonna have a range gun. So I come home, and the following week, a friend of mine, same friend, calls me up and says, hey, I was down at French Creek Outfitters, and they have a couple of SKS. You should go down there and check it out. If the price is right, maybe you should buy one. So I get in the car, I drive down there, and I meet him down at the store, and we're looking, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm looking at. I'm looking at a gun that's just covered in like this gook. It's oily, greasy, nasty, thick Vaseline stuff everywhere. And he's looking at it, and he's, it looks good. The wood is in good shape. You should, he says, if you've got the money, you should buy it. So, yeah, okay, I'll give it a shot. You say it's in good shape, I'll buy it, and we'll clean all this nastiness off, and we'll give it a shot at some point. So I tell the sales guy I'll take it, and he asks for my ID and some money to pay for a background check, and he hands me all the paperwork. And my buddy's giving me a hard time. He's telling me, look, I didn't tell you this before, but they're going to run a background check. You shouldn't have any problems, not unless you've got a record that I'm not aware of. And he said, but if anything comes up, he said, you're going to have like the SWAT team coming in here, and they're going to cuff you, and out you go for trying to buy a gun with a record. And I'm like, well, I don't have anything on my record, but what if there's a mistake? I don't want the SWAT team coming in after me. He's giving me a hard time. I'm now I'm sweating, I'm concerned, I'm worried. I'm watching the guy just sitting kind of on the phone for a long time, and my buddy keeps giving me a hard time. Yeah, you see that now he must be waiting for the cops or something. I've never seen the background check take that long. And I'm all paranoid and worried. And the guy comes back and says that everything's clear and I'm good to go, and I pay for the gun and I'm out. Well, as it turns out, the long delay was my common last name, White. It's common, so there was I guess they had to wait for an operator to get on the line, and then they had to do like a manual check as opposed to just feeding the information into the phone or a computer or whatever it was. So there was like an extra 15 minutes of hold time for this whole process to go down that I was really sweating it. So I go home. Actually, we went back to my buddy's house. He gave me a hand cleaning all the cosmoline off of it. We got it good to go, put it in my trunk, and I drove it home. And I didn't shoot that gun for... It wasn't until the next time we went up the mountains, and I think that was like 2.5 months later, something like that. So I was really itching to shoot it, but I had nowhere to go. There's a public range in the area, but I heard nothing but horror stories about these Pennsylvania Game Commission ranges that are open to the public, and I didn't want to go. I did finally join a range, but that was sometime later, and that actually was where this pistol that I have comes in at, where I've kind of been talking for a while, but I'm gonna keep doing it. So after my rifle experience, and I had a great time with it, I believe my wife and I were set to get married, I don't know, a couple of months. We had already bought our house. We were living together, and I wanted a gun for the house. You know, I had the SKS, but, you know, my concern was, you know, if anyone ever breaks in and I need to defend myself, I'm going to shoot this SKS. It's going to go through the person, through the wall, into the neighbor's house, and with my luck, you know, hit the neighbor's dog or something, you know. So I wanted to get something less powerful, smaller, something that my wife could operate in the event that someone broke in or anything ever happened. So I got all the paperwork together, and I got license to carry from the courthouse in the area, and then we headed down to my buddy's house, and then from there we got in the car again and I drove an hour to my buddy's house, and then we got in the car and we drove an hour further east to a gun shop that is a friend of a friend. Apparently, this one friend of ours that owns the cabin, he works with a guy that the guy's wife's family had owned a gun shop or something, so the guy kind of worked there part-time, and, you know, it was okay, you want a pistol, let's go to this shop, you know, we'll give him your business, and, you know, he'll give you a deal. So that's what I ended up doing. We took a ride out to this gun shop out in, like, I guess it was out in, like, Trevose, and in that general area, or Levittown. No, that's not it. Yardley. I think it was in the Yardley area. And so we go out there, and I start looking, and I had a limited budget of, like, I don't know, I didn't want to spend any more than like $350, and I didn't know what I was looking at. My only experience with pistols at that point was my friend's or with handguns at that point was my friend's revolver. So the first thing I'm thinking of was, well, you know, I need something small, compact for concealed carry. You know, so I tell the guy behind the counter, you know, I think I want a 32. And he looks at me and goes, 32? Buying a gun for your girlfriend? I was a little insulted. I'm like, no, you know, I want it for concealed carry. And he's like, oh, well, you know, my suggestion would be to go at least to a 38. You know, ideally, you'd want 9mm or larger. And so he talked me out of the 32, and I looked at what he had in 380 because I wanted a semi-auto because of the cool factor and all. So what I wound up getting was a Beretta Model 70S, and it's actually this. It's an old gun, and I actually just looked up the timestamp, and it was manufactured in 1974. And again, it's 380 auto. And actually, I grabbed one of the rounds when I unloaded it so that you could get a general idea what the rounds look like. They're fairly small, or hollow point. I think these are gold dots. It's been so long since I bought personal defense ammo for this gun that I really don't remember what they are. I bought like 2 boxes at a local gun shop, and fed one box through it. It worked, and then the other box just kind of like got stuck in a drawer, and I loaded up the magazine. But I got the one pistol, one magazine, and a gun lock, and like a box of target ammo for around $300. And I ended up taking a course with this at a local range with an NRA instructor. My wife and I took a class, and the idea was, I wanted her to be completely comfortable with the gun in the house. For whatever reason, if she was cleaning or needed to get into where we were keeping the gun, I wanted her to be able to pick it up, unload it, or use it with no fear whatsoever. So that was the goal. Go to this class, get her familiar with it, and and then have us both comfortable with the weapon in the house. She had not had any gun experience in her life, and it was a trying situation. She was really afraid of it, for that first week that I had it in the house before we took the class. But we ended up going to the class. She had a great time shooting the instructor's .22, not the 380. No fun with that. Didn't like it, and actually I don't really like it either. It was really comfortable when I bought it, and comfortable in my hand. It fit well. I liked the ergonomics of it, and I ended up buying it, obviously. But the first couple of times I took it to the range, it really beat the hell out of my hand. What ends up happening, even though my hand fits really well in here, and I like it, the 380, for whatever reason, is really violent when it goes off. And when the gun recoils, it's not that I get a lot of movement. The gun comes back, and because of the way it works, there's a hard plastic grip on here, and it's in two halves. There's one half here, one half here, and this seam really bites into the webbing between my thumb and index finger. And it's okay for 1, 2, 3 magazines, but once you start getting up to 5 and 6, my hand hurts and I don't want to shoot it anymore. Despite it having a hammer, it is not a double action first shot. You have to rack the slide, and it's got a magazine safety, so if you pull the trigger now, the hammer doesn't drop. Magazine has to be in it for the hammer to drop. And again, it is unloaded. But so I buy this gun, we take this class, we both enjoy it. I'm finding that I don't really enjoy shooting a gun so much, but I thought, in a self-defense situation, it's not like I'm going to be putting several rounds down range, or several magazines down range. So I went out and I started looking for holsters just to conceal it, and there was nothing for a gun made in 1974 that wasn't in 1911. And what I ended up getting was just this cheap generic holster for a gun with a barrel, I think 3 inches, and it's just a snap retention holster. It slips in your pants, and then you got the Velcro strap, that sort of it's another strap that goes over your belt and locks it. The Velcro is to adjust the snap. It's been so long since I used it, I really didn't know what was going on. But so I get this generic holster. I put my gun in it. Just playing with the... Oh, this is really tight. So, I'm carrying this around in my pants, and what ends up happening is I hate it. It's jabbing me in the side. Every time I move, it's working its way out of my pants. And even though I've got this belt loop on here, it gets to the point where it almost feels like it's going to teeter out of my pants, and then the belt stops it. So, I'm not enjoying it. It's painful to get to sit in the car for an extended period of time, and I'm just not enjoying the Beretta Model 70S experience. And I started looking for other guns after that, and I did end up settling on a Smith & Wesson M&P 9mm full size, which wasn't to be carried. I thought, I'll deal with this for the time being because I really want a range gun. I wanted to get into competitive shooting and things like that. But that's kind of where the story ends. There's no, you know, I could go on and on and on, but it's been like 25 minutes. And I really don't want to get this too long. And my throat's kind of dry from talking too much, and my cigar's going out, and we've got things I want to do tonight, and it's getting late, and I'm not smoking a cigar fast enough. So that kind of brings us to the end of the whole gun story thing. My tea is even hot. But that kind of brings us to the end of the whole gun story. And ever since buying my first SKS, or my first gun, which was the SKS, to the Beretta Model 70S, that I'm still kind of fond of. I don't want to get rid of it because I think it's really cool and I like it. I just don't like shooting it. So I'm really torn. Do I get rid of it and get something that's going to be useful? Do I keep it because it was my first pistol and I like it and it's cool? Or, you know, what do I do? You know, do I really want to have a safe queen kind of a situation? So I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet, but I have been thinking about reloading as of late. So I'm kind of researching that as a step towards doing the whole competitive shooting thing, because that's going to take a lot of rounds, and by reloading I may be able to reduce the cost a little bit, which would make it a little easier to do. So you know, a lot of gun stuff on the mind as of late, and I thought I would do a little, you know, video talking about them and things. So that's where I'm at. That is my Beretta Model 70S, and that is how I got started in the gun story. So if you're still with me and you're actually still watching this, hit up the comment section, whether it's in Blip TV or YouTube or right on my personal blog, and in the comment section, you know, tell me about your first gun experience. I find I really enjoy listening to people tell me about their first gun experience. So do that. Tell me about your first gun experience. If you want to do the whole video thing, go for it. But until next time, happy smoking, happy shooting. Catch you later.